Have you ever discovered a new chord only to forget about it a day later? The reason why is because you haven't fully integrated it into your way of playing and thinking. That's why in this video, I'm going to break down, I believe, the most effective way to learn any chord. Hey, if you're new to the channel, my name is Roger, and I've been playing the piano for over 20 years. And over that time, I've learned how to create music that makes me and others feel good. But in that journey, I've had to learn some pretty hard lessons, one of which is how to learn chords that I can remember a day or a month or even a year later. I came up with this pretty straightforward approach that I still use to this day. It's a three-part process, so make sure you stick around to the end so that you know about all three equally important steps. The first step is make a mental note of what chord you're playing. Now, I think we get extremely excited with learning new chords that we often forget about actually taking the time to remember and actually recall what chord we're actually playing. Like, we get so excited with hearing the chord that we forget to actually learn the name of the chord. By knowing the name of the chord, you're forming a stronger connection between how that chord feels in your hands, and also your mind is going to allow you to remember a whole lot easier when you know you can associate a chord name to the way it feels, if that makes sense. So let's say, for example, I wanted to learn I learned like a D minor 11 chord. So what I could do is, this first step is make a mental note of what chord I'm playing. So what I could do is I could either say out loud, like, hey, this is a D minor 11, or in my mind, I could be like, this is a D minor 11. Like, I don't have to say it out loud, but I can, in my mind, I could be like, hey, this is a D minor 11, and I can associate a D minor 11 chord to this chord. I know what this feels like. My hands are pretty stretched out, and that's what a D minor 11 chord feels like in this voicing. So that's the first step. Make a mental note of what chord you're playing, because if you were to refer back to that chord that you learned like a week ago, you could be like, hey, I learned a D minor 11 chord, and then, naturally your hands might lead you to what that chord felt like. So yeah, that's the first one. Make a mental note of what chord you're playing. Either say it out loud or in your mind, like, kind of say what the chord name is as you're playing the chord on the piano. So for me, a chord would be like this D minor 11 chord, and I would just say D minor 11. So that's the first one. Make a mental note. All right, now the second one is place the chord in context. Now, I think, once again, we get so excited with learning these new chords and they sound really good, but we often don't take the time to learn how this chord or chords fit into context of these other chords that we know. So I had this D minor 11 chord. Now, what I could do is I could find ways of how this chord fits in with other chords. So for example, let's say I had like this chord, and I went to like a B flat minor 9, and then I went to that D minor 11. So I had something like that sounds good. So like that works. So what I can do is I can say, hey, this D minor 11 chord meshes really well with this B flat minor 9, and then I go right into that D minor 11 chord. So this D minor 11 chord is a nice chord to play after this B flat minor 9. So I've placed this chord that I just learned, I placed it in context, and I found a way of how this chord can fit into the overall progression or song that I am playing. I guess another example of this D minor 11 could be like and then I play like a E flat minor 11, and then go down to the the D minor 11. So I got, like, that works as well. So I'm just finding ways of how this chord can fit into context of the overall progression I'm playing, because a chord by itself is just a chord. But when you find ways of connecting chords together, different chords together, then you finally create like a beautiful piece of art. The third and final step is learn it in all 12 keys. Now, I know this is like a topic that a lot of pianists don't really want to talk about, but I believe it's very important. It's important to learn these chords that you're learning and discovering. Play them in all 12 keys. I mentioned this D minor 11. What you can do is go through all 12 keys of that particular chord and that particular voicing. So what you can do is you can go up the keyboard. So you can go up the scale, chromatic scale. So I could start on D minor 11. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a mental note of what chord I'm playing. So this is D minor 11, E flat minor 11, E minor 11, F minor 11, F sharp minor 11, G minor 11. Like I'm making these mental notes, right? I can say it out loud or I can make it in my head. The whole goal of this is to just get comfortable with playing this type of chord and really just ingraining it in your hands of what that chord feels like within your fingers. Now I'm gonna go down the keyboard. I'm making a mental note. You don't have to rush it. There's no need to race through it. Just make a mental note of each chord that you're playing. Get comfortable with how that chord feels. I'm gonna go back up. I'm gonna go back down. Making a mental note. Either saying it out loud or saying it in my head what that chord feels like. So yeah, that's basically all 3 steps. 1, you want to make a mental note of what chord you're playing. 2, you want to place the chord in context. How does this chord fit into all the other chords that I know or fit into the overall scheme of the progression I'm trying to play? And then 3, learn the chord in all 12 keys. Get comfortable with how that chord feels in other keys and also make a mental note as you're playing that chord. And if you do all 3 of those things, you're going to be set. You're going to be good. Now that you learned the most effective way to learn any chord, I will watch this video next to see 3 chords you will always need.